In today's YouTube video, I'm going to be teaching you exactly how to have perfect crosshair placement in Valorant. If there's one thing I know about FPS games, it's that your crosshair placement is absolutely crucial between whether you actually kill the enemy or they kill you first. And if this video does help you out, be sure to drop a like on it too. And without further ado, we'll get straight on into it. So first of all, what is crosshair placement for those of you that don't know? Well, crosshair placement is where your crosshair is going to be on your screen. Good crosshair placement is going to be at the optimal position where you can take out the enemy as quickly as possible without having to move. Now, a lot of people, when I say good crosshair placement, they'll automatically think the head or the chest, which is a good inkling to have. However, it's not always accurate because often that will be very, very different to some scenario. For example, if an enemy is going to be crouching, you're not going to want to aim at the head of the standing position. You're obviously going to want to adjust it to the crouching position. So it really does depend on the scenario that you're in. But for the most part, it obviously will be the head or the chest where you want to be aiming at. And sometimes it can really be anywhere else if you can't see their head or chest. The best way to describe it is aiming at the optimal position to take them out or kill them without actually having to move your crosshair at all, which could be the feet if their feet are only shown. Now, first of all, why is crosshair placement important and good crosshair placement? What's the difference that it makes between someone who has bad crosshair placement and someone who has good crosshair placement? Why does it actually help? Because the more you understand why it helps, the more you'll be inclined to practice it more and get better at it, because it is a massive advantage, and here is what it does. And this will probably explain too why you die often even though you might have good aim on paper. Your crosshair placement is a massive factor. So when you're in a gunfight and you turn the corner, if your crosshair is going to be a little left to the head of the enemy, and you're going to have to adjust that crosshair to the right to move it onto their head. Your crosshair wasn't on their head, you've had to move it now. And this means that you are going to have to spend more time moving your crosshair before you actually fire and take them out. Now, if the enemy has gone ahead and had their crosshair placement directly on your head, they predicted where it would be when they turn the corner, all they have to do is press one button and shoot. They don't have to move with their mouse, all they have to do is shoot, which means their time to kill is going to be 10 times faster than you. They don't have to move, all they have to do is press one button, which means you're going to get taken out before they do. And this is because of that little time that you took to move it from the left position to the right, which means it's going to go from left of their head, being directly on their head. You got taken out because your crosshair placement wasn't great. Now, this is a very extreme example because not everyone's crosshair is going to be pinpoint accurate when they turn a corner. Usually, even pro players will have to adjust it a tiny amount. But the main thing here is that if you want to be taking out your opponent a lot quicker, you're going to have to adjust it as little as possible. And if you want to adjust something as little as possible, it's going to mean that you're going to have near perfect crosshair placement. And if you have it perfect, fantastic. If you're a little bit to the left just by a tiny bit, again, that is 10 times quicker to move it than being to the left by a lot. We want to minimize bad crosshair placement. So how do you practice crosshair placement? Well, the key is aim training. Please do not do aim lab when you're trying to practice your crosshair placement, because the models aren't going to be really realistic to Valorant at all, and it will hinder your performance. Instead, go into Valorant Zone, practice range, and set the bots to either stationary, so there's multiple of them on the screen at the same time, or simply set them on a timer mode where they will appear on the screen for a second and then disappear. Now, what you should initially have as a basis here is you should be able to have a level of which the enemy is at head height, and the level of the enemy which is going to be crouching at head height. There is a center beam in the practice range. I need you to go onto that beam and place your crosshair on where you think if an enemy was to appear in front of you, your crosshair would be on their head. And that is what you have to do now. You have to practice that and keep on practicing it so it ingrains in your memory. You need to go onto the bots and flick on them and practice them with your crosshair at head level. Now, I would recommend slow flicking and fast flicking. Get both of them done because they are both useful. But the main thing you want to be focusing on here is actually having accurate crosshair placement. Not simply having horrible crosshair placement. You want to have good crosshair placement. Then go into deathmatch and practice the exact same thing. Now, here's a breakdown of deathmatch. To have good crosshair placement, you need great game sense and great aim. You need to be able to know these, which means that when you are in a game, it's going to be very different from flicking onto bots who are on one surface level and you know where they're going to be appearing. An enemy could appear in literally any location. They could be crouching, they could be simply round a corner hiding, and they also could be on a different surface to you. They could be higher up, lower down. Go into deathmatch, take these factors into account. Oh, I'm going up a ramp now, I'm going to need to adjust my crosshair placement. I believe they'll be up here. Then if an enemy appears there in deathmatch, you take them out. Okay, my crosshair placement was fairly accurate. I need to move it to the left a bit time. Or, oh, he killed me because I had bad crosshair placement, I was all over the place. At least now I know where it's going to be. You need to take note of the game sense factor of what your surroundings are and what you need to do next time, and also take into account the crosshair placement where it needs to be. Whether an enemy is going to be crouching or not, it really is dependent on the rank. You can know if an enemy is going to be crouching in higher ranks because that position will be extremely useful to crouch in. But in bronze, silver, and lower ranks, an enemy is going to crouch because they simply want to crouch and don't know what they're doing with the game. Higher ranks, plays will be more predictable, which means crosshair placement is more predictable. But let me give you another example of how great crosshair placement can affect your game sense and mechanic. For example, if you have good crosshair placement and you're able to go up a ramp and aim at the head where the enemy is going to appear on the top of the ramp, if you go ahead and do that, and now suddenly they're crouching, your great crosshair placement is still going to be a massive factor, a massive advantage to you. Your crosshair placement is on the head, very easy to pull down, adjust, and hit their head when they're going to be crouching. Because of course, not everyone can read people's minds and predict every single play, so sometimes enemies might crouch and you might not expect it, but again, great crosshair placement is still going to help you out a ton. Map knowledge is very, very crucial for crosshair placement. I would say map knowledge comes into account a little bit more than mechanics in terms of crosshair placement, because as long as you have that great aim and you also know how to flick between different enemies in the practice range, and you generally know where head level is, crouch level for head, and also the chest, generally if you have those principles down, all you really need to know from now is game sense and map knowledge, which is why deathmatch is easily the best place to practice your crosshair placement. And as well, practice range is useful for starting off, getting the basics down, then move into deathmatch as soon as you possibly can to get that game sense down and start learning the different mechanics of the game. If you're going to be on a ramp, your crosshair placement is going to be a lot different. Ramps and different elevated surfaces are pretty hard to learn, especially if it is a slope. The reason being is because if an enemy's at the top of it and you're going to be going up not knowing that there's an enemy on the top of it, your crosshair placement is going to have to adjust the further you go up. So the more you go up the ramp, the higher the crosshair placement. But the main thing here is to be always taking note of your crosshair placement. What it looks like, what it's feeling like, where it's going to be placed on the enemy's head if there was an enemy around the corner. You should be taking this into account. You want to be taking mental notes and adjusting it if need be. You see your crosshair placement is not going to be great here. Okay, I'm going to adjust it. I've made a mental note of that. I now know what to do, and I'm going to adjust it. So if you're in a game and 30 seconds has passed, you should have thought about your crosshair placement at least once by then. Because an enemy could come around the corner at any time, and realistically here, the crosshair placement is going to be what saves you and gives you the advantage against them. Thank you for watching. Be sure to drop a like on the video if it did help, and subscribe to the channel for more tips and tricks videos like this. I do stream on Twitch, link down below for some of the most entertaining streams you'll ever watch. And also, I do have a Patreon page where you can support me to do this full time. There's a link down below, helps me with making more videos like this. And hey, click on the video on your screen right now if you want to go ahead and see 5 common mistakes that you are going to be making in low elo.